Well, welcome everybody to the July 10th, 2026 meeting of the Baltimore Regional Transit Commission. I'm the chair, John Laria. Welcome commissioners, both here and virtually, as well as other members of the public and interested parties. I want to acknowledge PennDOT Secretary Thompson, who is here today. Really great, Madam Secretary, and you're able to make it in person. And PennDOT's always well represented, but we are happy always to have the Secretary.
Thank you. It's great to join you.
Yeah, thanks so much. We have a very full agenda today, as we always seem to have, so I don't want to spend a lot of time at the outset. I'll just basically more to using the agenda as a framework to say, of course, we'll hear from the administrator. You've seen the presentation, members have seen the presentation that we sent around to review. We'll also begin the important process of looking at this year's CTP request, and we'll talk about that when we get there in the context of the role of this commission and its sunset in October to be replaced by Core Services Board, which will have a slightly different role with respect to the CTP going forward. But we have to manage, we want to manage effectively through this transition period so that we don't lose a step, so that we have an ability to have a robust input into the CTP request. Also, Don will be talking to us about sort of priority letter process, and then also there was an outline that was sent around to begin the process of preparing what is an annual report for this commission, but in this case will be our final annual report. And as you'll hear when we talk about it, it's intended to be not just a retrospective report, but also sort of a bit of a transition / handoff to the board, try and one-stop shop for people want to understand kind of what we've been up to for a couple of years and what this commission sees as the issues for the next phase. I would highlight, and we'll get to it when Holly speaks, but within the administrator's remarks is the publication of MTA's strategic plan, which I have read and reviewed, which seems to be an excellent template for the issues facing MTA and MTA's ambitions for the future. So we're looking forward to hearing about that as well, and there'll be an opportunity for some comment and discussion. But so with that, I think I will move us along to the reports and briefings, beginning with the administrative remarks. Holly.
Good morning. It's great to see everybody. And while they pull that up, I did just want to, thank everyone for their support. A lot of folks have reached out with the bus crash that happened Wednesday evening. I do also really want to thank Baltimore County Fire Department, police for their immediately fantastic partners, but really across the board. I mean, the state sent out the GO team and medevac, so just the MTA, team and staff do feel very supported as we're going to work through that incident. Baltimore County Police are the lead and they're investigating. They have acknowledged, and I will reiterate that I think it'll take a bit to figure out kind of what happened here. So I can't speculate or say anything. I know there's all sorts of crazy rumors going around if you're on social media, and I would just remind folks that social media is not real, and what comes out from Baltimore County Police is. So if you have questions, the Baltimore County Police are definitely going to be able to answer those. Our thoughts and prayers are obviously with the operator and those that were injured, and so we've been kind of closely monitoring that right now. Everyone is in stable condition at this point, and we're going to continue to reach out, make sure we provide support.
Holly, do your best to keep us informed, and I know you will within the limits of what you can do. And I know you don't know and can't always convey, which is perfectly reasonable. But if there's anything any of us can do to help. And I'll just commend you as well, because I think the response clearly, the Baltimore County, of course, and others, but MTA itself, I know how connected you are to your staff. It's evident to me how connected you personally are and how much the senior management cares about operators and staff. And while there are many people that was injured in the personal moment who seem to have suffered the most serious injuries as the operator, I know that's difficult for you. So thank you for everything you're doing. And let us know what we can do along the way.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Mike and his team, I know, went to the hospital and continue to support as well. And there are some family members of the agency that were ensuring how the support. Okay, so moving on, I feel like a lot of times I do get to start with tough topics, but we also have a lot of good things going on at the agency. So I did just want to share that we were the hosts this year for the American Public Transportation Association Rail Conference. So they have a number of kind of big conferences every year, and rail is one of the three big ones. So we hosted June 28th through July 1st. There were 1,700 people who came to Baltimore for the rail conference. They all enjoyed as well the Sail 250. So we were glad that we could bring that in for them. And it was a great experience overall. A lot of our team members were able to go participate. We can't always afford to send everybody to conferences. And I think we had close to 100 people kind of coming in and out to see kind of what's going on, sit in on sessions, learn their peers. And we had a number of speakers, including our secretary, was able to moderate a panel and introduce everyone, welcome them to Baltimore. And again, a number of our staff participated in panels and were able to kind of share some of the things that we're doing. We did also, our giveaway was some fun Metro plushies, a lot of good feedback on that, and those will be in our merch store here shortly. At the APTA conference, they do awards for safety and security excellence. So we were awarded back in April a Plus Security Gold Award for our Rules of the Ride Code of Conduct. So the code of conduct that we put out last October, and so we were recognized in Salt Lake City for that. And then at the rail conference, and it was great to have it locally so our team could be recognized there. We won a Rail Safety Gold Award for our rail temperature monitoring program. This was an idea that one of our staff had. It's a very simple, it's a puck that goes on the rail and is able to monitor the temperature. So historically what we've had to do, one step back. So when it's really hot, rail can buckle. It's not great. It can get kinks and it can buckle. And when that happens, there's a possibility of a derailment or kind of really terrible things happening. And so historically, we have always sent out teams to monitor the temperature of the rail. And once we get to a certain temperature, we will drop the speed of the trains to help with ensuring safe operations. We still send people out to do inspections and make sure that that's happening, but the pucks help give us real-time information to see what the actual temperature of the rail is. And once it hits a certain threshold, that's when we drop our speed, again, to ensure that safe operation. So easily repeatable across the country. So we were thrilled that we were able to kind of share that with folks. MDOT is serious about safety, and MTA was very happy to participate in the annual MDOT Safety Fair. So our team is always very proud. They did a demonstration with some of the records of how they lift a bus at the fair. It's really cool to see, and I think people enjoyed that. We did have one of our zero emission buses there, and we continue to do training with first responders on the zero emission buses and the things to expect differently for that. So, shout out to the safety team who participated there. This is our third or fourth year participating in the Baltimore Pride Parade. So again, our goal is to be part of the community that we are in. And so we have been much more out there at parades and communities and festivals and events. This year we did partner with the Maryland State Arts Council to do a competition for art on the bus. And so it was a great partnership. People were able to submit, they were judged, and the artwork that was selected, you can see there. And I know that the artist was thrilled. She came and actually marched with our team and loves seeing her art on a billboard. And so we're going to be doing more of that in partnership with Maryland State Arts Council. Bouncing around a little bit, we did also announce that we're creating a rider experience lab. So MTA has a number of opportunities for folks to get involved. We have our Citizens Advisory Council, our Citizens Advisory Council for Accessible Transportation, and our Youth Transit Council, as well as our Marked Riders Advisory Council. Those are like a monthly commitment where you come to a meeting once a month, which may be a bit much for some people. The Rider Experience Lab is an opportunity to say, hey, I'm interested in helping you guys fix problems, and can come in for kind of one-off type of thing. So for example, we may want to say, hey, our signage during disruptions, we want feedback on that. So we'll bring in a group of people, show them different options, have them help us to identify the best options for that. So we've got good responses there, and our team will start reaching out to folks as we hold these labs to get feedback. Speaking of opportunities to get involved, I did just want to note that we wrapped up our third year of the Youth Transit Council. We had 11 students who participated from Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Anne Arundel County. That's a good representation from throughout the region. They had 9 monthly sessions, and they were able to do tours of our metro, the new rail cars, our Kirk bus division. I met with them. A lot of our senior staff met with them. We also partnered with CMTA to have 2 sessions where they were able to kind of learn advocacy and engagement. And so, excited for that partnership that we're going to continue with them there. They also, so last year's group provided feedback on and basically kind of created for us the code of conduct. This year's group advised our Office of Customer Experience on service disruption poster notices and what kind of information should go on those. And they also partnered with our service delivery team on inconvenient bus stop locations and the best way to kind of message some of those. So we are really engaging them in kind of real world activities and things that we're doing at an agency. And so they're doing some really fantastic stuff. Some of the colleges, seniors are going to Columbia University, Goucher College, and University of Maryland on Eastern Shore. And one was appointed to the UNICEF USA National Youth Council beginning later this year. So really fantastic group of folks, and we're glad that we get to continue to do that. On the Redline side, Caitlin presented last time. So we did hold a series of open houses, over 3,300 community members that we've engaged with so far in 2026. And we have had over 1,200 responses to our surveys. To date, it is open through July 31st. And we're continuing to try and get out into communities, on buses, at bus stops, to get people to respond to the survey. We do want to make sure that we're getting their feedback there. We're gearing up for later this year. We will share the survey responses. We'll have to compile them once it closes. And we're looking forward to some tours that we're partnering with VMC on in October, fall timeframe.
Can I just, I just want to say, and I don't know who else was able to do this, but I did attend one of these open houses. Seems like a while ago now, but I just want to give you the feedback that I thought it was extremely well done. I thought the staff were extremely informed. The boards were excellent, and I think we saw the boards as a slide deck at the last meeting. So I may have said this at the last meeting, but I'm going to say it again. I really think, the framing of the questions and the combination of sort of open-mindedness, but also kind of real-worldness was a nice balance. That the staff and the consultants who were involved, I think, really were trying to listen to what people had to say, but also give some frank. And I think the slide deck does this too, some frank, kind of framing of where we stand in terms of our ability to deliver this project, especially regarding the question of mode. So I just wanted to thank them, and I want to thank you again and you pass it on to the team. Really, really well done. I'd be very interested to hear what the actual feedback you're getting, and I don't know how we'll use it. I don't know if it'll be statistically relevant or anecdotally relevant or whatever, but we do want to hear that as soon as you're able to put it together.
Yeah, no, and shout out Jerome Horn from our Redline team is here today. The team did a fantastic job, including Caitlin and the whole team there. And as I mentioned, once the survey closes, we will kind of be pulling everything together and be able to share, but obviously, give us a little bit to pull it together once it actually closes at that point. Mentioned earlier the MTA strategic plan. So we actually put out our very first agency strategic plan back in 2021. It was getting a little stale. It was a kind of 5-year plan, and also very focused on COVID and COVID recovery. And we're not there anymore. We're in a very different place in 2026. So we updated it. A lot of what you see in here is from kind of other existing plans. So you'll see Be More Bus in here. You'll see the Central Maryland Regional Transit Plan. You'll see our growth and transformation plan, kind of compiling them overall. So as a top line, folks know, hey, yeah, we got all these long range plans, but here's right now what we're focused on over the next 5 years as an agency. So that will be on our website. You guys have a copy of it, and happy to answer any questions about that.
Anybody, I don't know if folks had a chance to look through it in advance. I was hoping you might have a chance since we sent it around, but are there any specific questions for Holly on the plan? Again, like I said, it's good to do one of these, right? Because you get to hold yourself accountable for better or worse. Other people get to hold you accountable because I think it's a plan that covers from somewhat micro to certainly macro topics. So yeah, we can discuss whether it might make sense to do a strategic, go through the plan specifically, perhaps at the next meeting, which admittedly the last meeting of this commission, but nonetheless, it might be a good pivot point to just review what MTA views as its plan for the next 5 years. It's totally self-explanatory, but I still think sometimes it's best to go through it and talk about it a little bit. But I really do recommend it to everybody in the commission, and anybody who might be listening, to just get a really, really good overview of what MTA is trying to do from, as I said, from the smallest to the broadest initiatives.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, I mean, it is, that we have the 3 pillars there that we're kind of really putting underneath everything underneath, right? We want to deliver safe, reliable, rider-centered experience, a lot of kind of workforce focus. So we want to empower and equip our team to deliver the mission. And we do want to modernize and sustain our transit infrastructure. So kind of a lot of basic stuff that we have talked about here, and just really kind of honing in on those basics to keep everyone.
Can I ask you one follow-up question? And I don't know if this is a question for you or for the secretary or how, but where does this document get you? How does it get used? In other words, is it simply is it internal to keep you straight in terms of management? Is it used as an advocacy piece to tell the MTA story and outline needs? I mean, how do you see it being used in the next period of years?
I mean, all of the above. I think primarily it is intended to be an internal document to guide our staff as we're making decisions, right? Like it lays out where we want to go, what we're doing. And so it is our internal kind of guiding focus. There's a ton of priorities. And so as you look at our priorities, where do they fit within here? And if they don't fit within here, is this something that we should be doing at this time, and really kind of thinking that through? We did, with the previous one, we distributed it to elected officials, and we had like a placemat that went with it. So, we'll work with the Secretary's office to look if we're going to do something like that. It will be on our website, so folks are able to take a look. But it really is intended just to kind of drive internally where we're going.
Yeah, my reaction is at the very baseline internally, but I do think it's an effective piece, and I would like to see you use it in whatever way you, Secretary's office, is appropriate. With legislators, you can't make people read it, but it's very readable. It's digestible, and whether it's legislators or other advocacy groups, I just think advocacy groups who are engaged here, just using it, allowing them to distribute it. Transit Choices, I don't see Transit Choices here today, but they've got a regular rhythm of things, and just make sure people know it's available, because I do think it tells a good sort of overall. It's an overall snapshot of kind of where MTA sees itself. So let's try and do that.
Holly, strategic plans always drive me crazy.
Fair.
Because sometimes everybody knows they're done and put on a shelf and people forget about it.
Right.
When I read through it, how do you tie, if we took those 3 pillars, do you tie those to some KPIs? How how do you measure when you get through 27, you go back and say, hey, we did great on this. We need to,
Yeah, so internally at MTA, we do publish our goals every year. So we have identified what goals we want to accomplish on an annual basis. And we have assigned to each of those, there's a goal owner, and then there's people responsible underneath that. They lay out their plan, quarterly meetings to kind of check in with where we are and are we hitting those goals. Some of the stuff lends itself well to KPIs, right? Like it's a number and it's trackable. Some of it is, did we do it or did we not?
Right.
So it's a bit of a mix there. Right. But our team does, this is our driver, right? So when we're looking at our goals and looking at our goals every year, it's how do they fit within these buckets?
But it did a great job telling the story. It did. I always say strategic plans are sort of like almost like a eulogy. If you don't know the person when you leave there, you can never get. So it did a good job telling the story when you didn't know about it. So
no, thank you. And yeah, to your point, we very much intended this not to be a plan that sat on the shelf, and that's why a lot of the stuff in it is incorporated from other plans that we're already working on. Like we're not creating something new or different. This is kind of encapsulating and just sharing the story of the things we're working on.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Thanks. All right, please.
Some fun stuff. We are doing, actually starting today, our first ever scavenger hunt. So this was an internal idea. The team said, hey, can we do a scavenger hunt? I'm like, yes, that sounds fun. Make it happen. So they put together the ride and seek scavenger hunt. It started today. It ends at noon, 1 o'clock on Sunday. So folks can go out as an individual or teams of up to 5. You can take your family out. And the idea is to kind of show a lot of the fun stuff that exists around Baltimore that you sometimes forget about, and that you can access via transit. So we do want to let people know, like, hey, our transit system goes a lot of places and you can access these really, really cool things. So you may see QR codes with the ride and seek at bus stops and stations around town, and that's what people are doing. So we had, I think, over 100 signups earlier this week. I'm not sure where we stand right now. There's an app that people sign up, and so there'll be some fun prizes, including MTA swag, as well as bragging rights for the winners. And I did also want to provide an update on the Cromwell Light Rail situation. So early July 4th, so we had that fun storm that came through July 4th, and Glen Burnie down in Anne Arundel County got hit pretty hard with some straight line winds. And unfortunately, right around Baltimore Indianapolis Boulevard, BGE lost, I think, over 25 poles. 19 of them fell onto our catenary, which was really fun. So we had to obviously stop service, set up a shuttle bus. It started at first from Patapsco. We're now able to run service into BWI, and there is a shuttle bus that goes from Linthicum to Cromwell. BGE is a fantastic partner. They were out there right away. They immediately set up a mobile command station, and they're kind of working. They have crews that are working 24 hours a day. Our biggest issue is we can't do anything until they get the poles off of our catenary. We don't even have a full sense of what the damage is until they get their poles off of our catenary. So they're working as quickly as they can. Our team is doing the things that we can to get ready. So we're kind of stringing, that we have catenary on site, we're stringing hangers, we're getting ready. And so as soon as BG is out, we will jump in and start to kind of restring the catenary. Don't ask me for when we will restore, because I don't have a date. We're hopeful for next week based on the progress that we've seen, but some of that again will depend on how much damage BGE actually fully gets out there.
When you have that degree of damage and the repair is being done, is that done entirely in-house, or do you have contractors who are specialized in essentially hanging catenary, right? I mean, it's.
Yeah. So it depends on the situation. In this case, we are going to bring in an emergency contractor to assist with hanging the catenary. Just the amount of staff that we have internally isn't enough to do. It's about 3/4 of a mile catenary that has to be rehung. So our team is the ones who are getting everything ready now, and then the contractor. I did also, this was prepared obviously prior to the incident on Wednesday, but I did just want to note that, a shout out to the training team, to our operators, to our safety team. A really noticeable stat here is that our preventable safety events, so that's basically when a crash happens, was it our fault? So every crash that happens, we evaluate, we take a look, they determine preventability. And it has been trending down on all of our modes in a really positive way. I mean, our preventable bus accidents declined 75% year over year as of May. June of this year was our lowest monthly total since August of 2020. And our preventable bus accidents decreased 10% between 24 and 25. In 25, we did have the second lowest rate of major bus events out of kind of all the US agencies, or the top 15 agencies per National Transit Database. And you can see even when it's higher, we're talking 2 accidents per 100,000 miles. So it really is a very low rate to start, and the team has been able to kind of pull it down from there. So we attribute this to basically improvements in training. The training team has really been focused on ensuring safe operations, engagement with our employees, and kind of working to change that employee culture, and then again, that commitment to safety culture. So just wanted to shout out the teams for making that happen.
That's a question on that. We know that we have more speed cameras in a lot of places out there. Was there any like a comparison between whether, since speed cameras were put in place, was it due to more adherence to speed rather than, and not only just dealing with the employees or operators, but maybe dealing with the public traffic that goes through as well? Did you have a comparison on those?
I mean, so between 24 and 26, like the amount of speed cameras, I mean, it does continue to increase, but hasn't increased that substantially. So our team did, take a look at, is there speed, is it red light cameras, is it something else? And what they did come back to was basically just, I think it's a change in behavior and kind of culture, where folks, again, I'm gonna give the operators credit, right? Like they do a fantastic job of defensive driving and not getting into those kind of preventable crashes.
And I'll just add that speed continues to be one of the key contributing factors to accidents, to crashes across our transportation system. And overall, we've had 2 straight years of declines in fatalities, particularly among vulnerable road users, which we're excited about, but we need to continue to make progress. Earlier this week, the governor joined us in announcing a new safety campaign called Slow the Fast Down, that is aimed at people, a particular demographic. I hate to say it to the men in the room, but particularly young men who just drive too fast and don't fully appreciate the consequences. So earlier this week, we announced that Slow the Fast Down campaign, and you'll see it on billboards, signs, and media across the state, at least through the end of the year. We're going to kind of assess how effective that campaign is, but that's just another tool that we're using to really push out the message that people need to drive responsibly.
Thinking about, getting the tax stripes out, to blow out the tires, you can pull them out. It's insane out there.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Okay, and then just to wrap up, John mentioned the BRTC transition and the core services board of directors. So just want to, from our side, MTA is coordinating closely with the secretary's office and the governor's appointments office, because the governor's appointments office is the one who will do the appointments. We are developing an internal and external engagement plan, so that we can kind of tell staff what's going on and make sure that they're aware of the transition and the change. There are the 2 deputy administrative positions, and so we have to create job descriptions and kind of work through that. We do also have to work with the Maryland Transportation Commission on the salary piece of that, and so this is new for them. So we're doing some education and making sure we're kind of all getting ready towards that. The support officer analyst positions, so working towards that with the goal of advertising probably August timeframe, so that we can be ready for an October 1st start. And then we are developing an annual board schedule and bylaws based on a lot of what we've done here at BRTC, so that when folks come in, it's like we're not starting from scratch. Any questions there?
Thanks.
So let me just ask a question. Your staff is gonna create the bylaws as opposed to the board?
So the board will approve them, but we want to give them something to start with so that we're not just kind of coming in starting from scratch. So we have a draft that is based on what BRTC has plus the legislation. Obviously, we anticipate that there will be comments and changes to it from the board, but we just wanted to kind of give something that they can start with.
Okay.
I think it's similar to what, BMC did here, because we are staffing the board, so we just, if we say right bylaws.
Sorry, I was just curious about that part, because typically the board
Yeah.
votes and puts the bylaws together, so I was
Yes.
just curious.
No, and
we
we're-
put together a straw proposal, if you recall.
When we fully anticipate the board will have changes and edits and we'll vote on that. We just want to give something to start with, because sometimes it's easier to react to something versus starting from a blank piece of paper. Similar with the schedule, right? Like we have a schedule that we think makes sense and we know we're going to get feedback, but we want to come in with something in October. That way we're not trying to. Yes, yep. And just wrapping up again, the team continues to be out there in the community. We did have a bus for the America 250 that we sent out in these heat events. Water is a big focus, and so we continue to advertise that and let folks know, like, hey, we're doing that. We did some new signage as well at the BWI airport, so wanted to kind of show that there. It was not always obvious before when you came in where light rail was and when the next train was coming, so it was a good partnership with the airport. And also shout out to BWI and again, the multimodal partnership that we have. They made some changes to the platform down there. It used to be these awful, very slippery tiles, which was not a great experience. And so now it's a better experience on the platform. And so again, great partnership with the airport. So lots of kind of little stuff happening, but just want to make sure I'm shouting that out too. Any questions?
The airport thing's great, because I've been there several times and people have asked and I had no clue how to tell them to get there. And I saw that just, it was the other day, I think, 2 days ago I was there.
It's pretty new, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, again, that's that great kind of multimodal partnership, and I want to shout out Administrator Griffin, that she's been very open and going forward. Okay, and I think we're now into budget presentations, and that's
Yeah.
a tag team for me and Kate, but I'll pull that up. Okay, so this is a budget update, pretty similar to what we did for this group last year. But we are trying to, transition a bit more to what the new boards will be, so we're sharing a bit more information. Obviously, we expect it will continue to evolve and change with the boards and how we're gonna do things, but,
Can I just say one thing for context? Thank you. I think people know this, or most people know this, but not everybody, and I think we have just an obligation to explain it. Either way, one of the significant changes in the legislation that created the new board is that it requires that board to approve not the MTA budget per se, but the MTA budget request of MDOT. And I'm sorry, this will be redundant for almost all of you, but I just want to say it. Because of MTA's status as a mode within MDOT and the way we fund transportation and the way the Transportation Trust Fund works, and the state budget works, and on and on and on. I think those of us who are involved in the work group that created ultimately the legislation and the new board recognize that you can't have a board that approves the MTA budget because we don't control the revenues, right? And that's not that's not always the most comfortable thing, and maybe someday it will change or evolve, but that's not where we are now, and I don't think anybody thought we could get there in the current situation. So the sort of compromise, but a step in the direction of greater local input, greater local involvement, greater sort of transparency, was that the new board would approve MTA's budget request, which would then go to the secretary, then ultimately to the governor, and the budget would be created based upon that. And that's what will happen. How that works is up to the new board and MTA and MDOT. So that's not what's going on here because we're not yet the new board. Obviously, this budget request, I think, has already been, you'll explain it to us, but I think it's already essentially been submitted to MDOT. And therefore, the step that would occur in the new board hasn't happened because it wasn't required to happen. So no complaints about that. I'm just trying to explain how it will be different for those of you who expect to be involved and who are paying attention next year. That said, I do think that the information in this update is more than we typically, it's only been several years. I think there's been a progression of sharing more and more information and this commission's ability to sort of engage in the process, although it is a step short of what the new board will do. And the new board, for some people, will be a step short of what people would like to do in terms of the MTA budget, but recognizing, as I said a minute ago, the practical realities of the way transportation budgeting happens in the state. So just wanted to provide that perspective. So we're in this little bit, as Holly said, it's not exactly a hybrid, but I think we're probably seeing more today than we probably have seen last year, and last year we probably saw more than we did the year before. And we should talk as a group about how we can at least have an impact on this budget. And I think the fact that what this commission has clearly done, even if there had been no board and any of those things forthcoming, is to understand MTA's budget request, to ask whatever questions we needed to understand it, and then hopefully to become effective advocates for it to the extent that the commission feels strongly about this or that, with the secretary, with ultimately the governor's office, with the legislature, and so on. So that's just the framework I wanted to provide. Are there any questions about that or comments?
I just want to add, and I think everybody in this room knows the way the Transportation Trust Fund works and the CTP process, but we have a growing list of needs across the system: transit, state highways, port, airport. And so the budget piece of it, understanding what the needs are and what the existing budget is likely to be, is an important component. But what we really need is to work very closely with the governor's office and the General Assembly to kind of work out what a sustainable, predictable, sufficient source of funding is for the transportation as a whole, so we can better plan and execute the long-term strategy, like the strategy document that Holly had in place. Where we find ourselves is usually it's sort of a backward-looking exercise based on the money that has been appropriated by the General Assembly that dictates, of course, how we set our budget, and it's very, even though the CTP goes over the course of 6 years, every year we're constrained by what the annual amount is that's available across the system. And so I think it's important to understand what the budgetary needs are for MTA, but also how that fits into the larger whole. And then think about how all of you as transit advocates, operators of transit systems, think about how we fund transit, opportunities to fund transit and the larger system going forward, because we really gotta solve that, persistent problem. It's not an issue that's unique to Maryland by any means, but we've gotta find a solution that works for Maryland.
I appreciate those comments, and I think that they're very vital comments, but I would also add that I think that it's gonna be important if we're gonna start to work with the governor's office, as we should have been doing it. We were in some type of way, right? That there's also equity associated with how we look at the budget and how we look at the budget for the Baltimore region and the DC region. That we really look at it, because it's only so much in that pie. But when there's only so much in that pie and a larger majority is going elsewhere versus over here, I think that's the elephant in the room that we really, from the Baltimore region, should discuss.
Understand that.
Yeah, I would just briefly, I'd want to endorse what both of our colleagues have just said. I mean, with regard to the secretary, you don't have to tell us that we need more transportation revenue in the state. And I think that we've been talking about that. We were very involved in 2 sessions ago, the package that was kind of, knitted together. But I think everybody recognizes that we need a more long-term sustainable source. People have different views about what that might be, of course. But I think there is a growing sense that in this upcoming session, it's no secret, I mean, just listen to what people have been saying, that there's a hope that transportation revenues will be a top tier item and that we'll come up with a way to do it. So we're looking forward to that happening. We're looking for each of us individually and collectively participating. I'm sure, Secretary, you're interested, because at the end of the day, we do need more revenues. I mean, there's obviously, we'll see this in a minute. I mean, we're struggling with state of good repair, even though admittedly 2 years ago it made an enormous stride in state of good repair. But we have to pay for things for which there is no revenue. The red line, is probably top tier, be more bus, and when you look at the presentation, those of you who haven't seen it, these things can't be done without more revenue. So we do have to all figure out together what the revenue piece is. And then regarding what the vice chair has said, there are numerous times in the life of this commission where we've gotten into these sort of the DC region versus the Baltimore region, and we've said all along, I know I've said this, I love WMATA, I love transit in DC. We're not here to deprive or diminish commitments to transit elsewhere in the state, but frankly, we wouldn't be doing our job. I mean, go read the law that created us if we weren't advocating for our equitable piece of the pie, and I think we have to keep doing that. WMATA and MTA, that is DC Regional, Capital Region Transit, and Baltimore Region, are not on equal footing because they're not organized and governed the same way. I mean, there is no WMATA in Baltimore. Some of us have talked about the impact of DMV moves, which is a big effort that was made by the Board of Trade and by WMATA to develop a strategic plan and funding approach for the WMATA system. Again, that's chaired by the Board of Trade, for which arguably we have an analog in the State of Greater Baltimore Committee, and WMATA. Presumably, no one would understand if MTA decided to co-chair with the GBC an effort to raise revenue for MTA. So I say that just to say there is a structural digression between the two systems that is what it is, because of the structure of Vermont and authority, tri-state, and all the things that we know. But I don't really want to argue with that. I just want to figure out how we address the consequences of it. And the way to address the consequences of it is to say, how do we, the rest of us, make sure that the Baltimore region, despite these sort of structural differences, is taken care of? And I know you understand that, but I'm just saying that because I think that the big theme for us has been more money for everybody, but equitable distribution of the money for the Baltimore region. So thank you both very much for those comments. Okay, I think Holly, go ahead.
Okay, so as a reminder, we do focus a lot on the CTP, which is the Capital Consolidated Transportation Program, which is primarily the 6-year capital budget portion of MTA's budget, which is obviously very important. Those are the things that we buy and we build. There is also just as important the operating budget to make sure that we have the people who can keep running our services every day. So I'm going to talk operating budget, and then I'll turn it over to Kate, and we'll go through the capital ones. So our FY 27 operating budget is 1.385 billion. So a pretty large capital budget. It is focused on service. So I think I've presented before the different proportions of this, but between the lots funding and our actual funding, the majority of our budget goes towards putting service out on the street. Our total budget is up about 70 million year over year, which is 5.4%. In the Baltimore region, it's up about 53 million, which is 5.5%. Breakdowns of each of the modes there. I'm not going to go through those specifically. The one I did want to highlight is we did receive $2 million from the general fund to begin a Trade Point Atlantic to White Marsh commuter bus. So we're working with Baltimore County on that to also ensure that we're providing some service in the Essex region to allow folks to get back and forth to Trade Point and the jobs there more easily. So we're working through the procurement piece of that. We're going to have to go to the Board of Public Works and ask for their approval, but we are targeting early September, late August for that. Statewide, we're up 0.9 million or 0.6%. And again, you can see the breakdown there. And then we do show Mark separately since it does serve both Baltimore and kind of statewide, and that is up about 2.5%. The biggest change that we did have is police for the purple line, which were not previously in the budget. We did get PINs approved for that, and so 9.3 million to ensure that we have safety and security on the purple line, and we'll also focus on the MARC stations in that area and commuter bus. So it is, yes, purple line focused, but ensuring safety and security overall for the region. Revenues, our FY26 operating revenues were about $90 million. You can see again, kind of as increases year over year as riders come back. The biggest increases that we did see were in MARC, as more MARC riders are moving to work. We're returning to office full time, and so those revenues are continuing to grow. A bit flatter for core services and commuter bus, but our core services is still the highest proportion of revenue. So looking for additional, kind of operating priorities this year and next year, things that we would like to do. One is additional overtime funding for our core service. The Paid Family Leave Act is going to effect July 1st, and so we're anticipating we may need some additional overtime to make sure that we're covering and ensuring the service is getting out there for that. In the Be More Bus plan, we had identified some regional service that we would like to do. So that includes a pilot to Annapolis, so between Annapolis and Baltimore. Right now we have the commuter bus that goes 6 times a day, in the morning and the evening, and we would love to have that, an all-day service, half hour, so that folks can get back and forth more easily and more quickly. Similarly, Baltimore to Hagerstown via Frederick. We have a number of MTA employees who live in Frederick and bemoan the lack of transit access from Frederick to Baltimore. Looking at the possibility of increased metro frequency with the new rail cars once they are fully implemented. Looking at going to 6-minute headways there. Expanded weekend MARC service is something that we have got Amtrak agreement on, particularly going up to Perryville, because right now we stop at Martin State. on the weekends, and so expanding that service, all the trips up to Perryville, would be a great, service for, Baltimore County folks in particular. So again, looking at that, continued our bus maintenance apprentice program and expanding our apprentice program. It's been really fantastic for us, and we'd like to make sure we're continuing to invest in that. We presented previously on, transit ambassadors, attendance, having additional folks kind of out in the system helping. We do have a contract that are within the next couple weeks, we'll probably have some folks out there, but good continued expansion of that. Cleaning, safety, security, cleaning are the number 1, 2, and 3 complaints that we get. And so again, just additional folks out there to clean. I think SOJ would probably say the same thing. We could be picking up litter all day, every day, and still not get in front of it. Transit signal priority, the contract to just kind of keep that going. BRT for Howard County, this was put into the budget, so they're going to extend the flash from Montgomery to Howard, so that is happening, and so just making sure we're having funding for that. Marketing for the Purple Line again was included as a JCR requirement that we set up a marketing program towards the end of the year. So we're just making sure it will be funded, but not having to take it from somewhere else would be great. Diesel. So diesel continues to be higher than anticipated, and so making sure we're covering those costs. And then Mark, I think I shared this previously, but there's the American Association of Railroads that does an overall calculation of railroad inflation every year. And so it's built into our contracts that we pay that. One year it was like 25%. This year I think it's right around 6%. So we'll have to absorb that on our Mark contracts. So overall about 41 million that we're
When you go through these, do you ever, I know you must, you say, okay, hey, we're not gonna get X. What things could we cut? Do you think about that?
Yes. I mean, I think there's some of these that are absolute needs, right? Like the Mark contractual
Right.
increase. That is
That's what I'm
happening.
thinking, yeah.
I can't do anything about that. Annapolis regional bus pilot is a like to have, but not a requirement, right? So we have to do kind of balance. But just wanted to share for this group, hey, all the things that we were.
So I was just curious about the overtime funding for core service. I deal a lot with overtime issues, and I guess do you guys have a tiered management control over how you're managing what it looked like in the past? What's it looking like now? And are you trying to cut that number, or are you just trying to make it to stay stable? I'm asking curiosity, but also, I mean, I get railed at this in my budget hearing about my overtime, and I said, well, if only emergencies or needs happen between 8 and 4:30,
right,
you wouldn't have to do it. So I mean, you're kind of in the same position. So how do you?
Yeah, so overtime management is a huge focus for our operating team. So they're required. So every morning we get a report of how many call outs we have. They take a look of how many folks we need to call in. The union contract allows us to bring people in for 2 hours and then cut them loose. And I and probably Mike gets a lot of complaints that we cut people at 1 hour and 59 minutes. So that we're kind of minimizing the amount of overtime that we're paying. So the goal is basically to have people available. So when work is, we can put all the service out on the street. So they report in the morning, they report in the evening. They have daily targets that they're working towards. And we do get overall a weekly report that goes to the entire agency, trying to figure out how we're managing that. The issue is, again, is balancing service, the service levels that we're putting out there. So, someone calls out, that means the bus isn't going out on the street. So trying to kind of balance what that looks like. We are looking at making some changes in the schedule to, align that. So we did make some adjustments in the summer schedule that went into effect June 23rd. So we've seen some improvements since that went into effect, and we're looking for additional focus in the fall. But one of the things that has happened is there is the Paid Family Leave Act. And so, previously when folks would be out on FMLA, a lot of times it was unpaid. And so now it would be paid. So we're just trying to account for that as well.
Do some of them come from the maintenance side as well?
Yep, it's across the board.
How much of the overtime funding is 20 million do you think is gonna go towards the paid family leave versus the true overtime cost?
About 10 million, I think, is our estimate.
10 million.
So
It's not
we're
as bad with the overtime.
Yeah, it's brand new for us. So this is our estimate based on reaching out to other agencies that have done things like this. You know, in the first week, we saw about a 60% increase in requests, so we're kind of balancing that. We're hoping it's an early spike and it will level out. But it's a lot of unknowns for us right now.
Increased metro frequency, and I think you said you're trying to get it down to 6.5.
6 minutes, yeah.
6 minutes of that, but, have you, is there, a way to come up there, if you compare it to other transit, subway, systems to where they have more frequency that only has one line? Like, not comparing to, DC, because they'll have one line coming in that also can service other areas, but it's going into another direction as well, but, has there been a comparison, because, Baltimore's driven,
Yeah.
28 minutes from end to end.
I mean, the goal is just having trains that come more frequently. I mean, the number one complaint that we get outside of safety, security, cleanliness is we want buses and we want trains more frequently. So just looking at what that possibility would be, it would be additional operator pins is what we'd be looking at there if we were gonna do that. This is one, right, like again, in terms of needs versus nice to have, that would be a nice to have.
I know you're gonna turn next to the capital needs, so before we move to that, just for the benefit of everybody, can you just talk for a moment? I think we spent a lot more time, have spent a lot more time here on CTP and capital. The sort of operating budget sequence and cycle, where are you in that process? Just remind us how that works. I think we've all probably memorized the CTP timeline at this point.
Yeah, so we're in FY27 right now. It started July 1st. So this budget started basically last fall. It became part of submitted to the governor's office, became part of the governor's budget that was submitted to the General Assembly in January. So then the General Assembly obviously got to review, approve, and there were some changes, right? The Purple Line Police started higher and became lower. BRT got added, so there were definitely some changes in the budget during the General Assembly process. So then once they published the budget, that became our official budget for FY27. There are opportunities to look at a budget amendment to add funds or move funds around during the year. So that's kind of what we're looking at here for this year. We're also looking at our FY28 budget. So that's kind of starting now, looking at these needs, looking at the increases across the board, salaries, diesel contracts. And so that gets built into that for FY28, which will then become part of the governor's budget.
So are this list of priorities on the screen? I mean, I'm trying to get the sort of the noun. So priorities, you've talked about things or needs, it's not on the chart, but you've talked a little bit about, must have, like to have. I mean, arguably some of these are either contractual, like the overtime fund, some of it's kind of statutory, it's not contractual, but it's mandated. Yeah. Are these numbers that you are hoping to roll into the 28 operating budget, or are you hoping to find room for some of these in the rest of 27? I'm just trying to, how do we plug into that?
So the idea is there's an opportunity to ask for, it's called the over the target request. And so we would say, hey, we're in the fiscal year, but we would like to add more funding to this fiscal year. So this is kind of what we would ask for here. Again, a lot of these are nice to have, so I don't anticipate that we're gonna get them, but again, trying to kind of show more than we have previously. And then when we look at our FY28 budget, they're still gonna be on the list of asks. So Secretary Thompson will get to hear my asks, time and time again and evaluate based on priorities and available funds.
When is the sort of serious requesting and evaluation start for the actual FY28 operating budget?
We are in process. I mean, we because it all rolls up to part of this as part of the CTP, so
Right.
we are in process now.
Also to, and try not to wear two hats here, but you're in contract negotiation with 2 unions at this
Yep.
time. And also too, with the PFMLA, and you say you can do amendments for our budgets, are those being incorporated into those asks, or will be incorporated into those asks? Then you just in July 1st, went into the new fiscal year budget.
So the contracts, so the way that we handle that and have always historically handled that is that we don't budget for that until we know what it's gonna be. So, once we reach a settlement, ratify, we start incorporating into budget at that time. We do have a general sense, which we have shared with you with how much money we have available. And that's kind of where we're at right now, but we won't incorporate it until it's actually ratified.
The other, that you asked an interesting and somewhat complicated question. The other interesting aspect of it is DBM has directed all the departments and agencies to deal with the PMLA through their existing operating funds. So they're not planning to grant any budget improvements or budget amendments or increased funding to cover PMLA. And the theory being is, well, you've already planned to pay for these people on an annual basis, so it's sort of baked into that. What it doesn't account for is the additional expense that you may have in overtime to cover the people who are not able to work or not working their standard shift because they are on PMLA. So we're gonna have to build that into our existing operating budget plans, or make a really compelling case that DBM, the General Assembly, already indicated they're not inclined to the grant.
Any other questions on-
Sorry.
No, I was about to say something very interesting, because how is it that, you have to pay the overtime? Is it because you're doing an over the target request to cover those expenses?
Well, they would have, family medical leave, obviously it's not previously paid until starting July 1st. And what they've said is every department and agency needs to figure out how to fund that based on their existing operating funds. Yeah, so there's no, they have said, we're not entertaining additional, budget amendments for that.
So again, we're looking at, all sorts of options to manage our overtime, ensuring that, folks are coming to work and that our schedule aligns with that. So some of the schedule changes that we've seen, we'll continue to make those adjustments to best align with that. Okay, any other questions on operating? Otherwise, I'm gonna turn it over to Kate.
Okay, good morning. So picking up on the capital budget side, as you know, we've discussed many times, the capital budget is really built up from our state of good repair needs. You've seen this slide before. This is the capital needs inventory we put out in 2025, looks at our 10-year state of good repair needs. The total state of good repair need for MTA is 9.9 billion over that 10-year period. When we look at just the Baltimore region component of that, it's 6.14 billion. You can see how that breaks down there in the chart. Just as a reminder, the capital needs inventory is state of good repair and small enhancement focus. It doesn't include our overhead administrative costs, our expansion priorities, as well as freight and local. So when you take that 9.9 billion and look at it year over year in our asset management system, we talked about this before as well, but just as a reminder, our state of good repair needs are growing over time. This is a combination of deferred maintenance as well as our aging transit systems, our 40-plus-year-old metro system, 30-plus-year-old light rail system. So a lot of that original equipment is reaching its useful life benchmark. Currently, the green line there is what's in the current CTP. So in the 2026 through 2031, our existing CTP, 88% of state of good repair needs are funded. You can see the drop off in 2031, where we're down to 69% in 2031, where those dollars just aren't stretching as far. And then finally, just showing that growing trend. If you take the first 5 years of this look ahead, the average annual need is 800 million. If you take the back 5 years, it's 1.2 billion. So it's a significant growth over this 10-year period. Breaking this down to look just at the Baltimore region, very similar trend in terms of growing over the years. And in the Baltimore region, for the first 5 years, 2.32 billion of our $3 billion state of good repair needs are currently funded, which is 77%. And you can see the growth there for the remaining years of this, 827 million on average for state of good repair, and then 182 million for enhancement in the 2032 to 2035 period.
Okay, I'm sorry, getting back a slide. Do you have a list or schedule of what is, I guess I could say in the 77%, but maybe I could say in the other 23%? Like, is there a specific list that says 77% of our state of good repair needs are met, and that means this stuff is 23% is not met? Does that exist in that simple form at this point?
I mean, it's not quite that simple, but yes, so the 100% is built up in terms of like, that's catenary assets, that's
Yes.
traction power assets. When you compare that to what's currently funded, there's a gap there, right?
Right, I mean, I guess I'd be interested in understanding what makes up that gap and just trying to understand, like, how in general terms, did you triage into the 77% based upon, we have a fixed amount of money, what's the highest priority, and you just kept going until you ran out of money and everything else is at 23%?
Yeah,
Again, I'm oversimplifying.
Yeah, we look at asset criticality as part of how we manage our state of good repair. So can we run service safely if these things break or not? And we're gonna prioritize the things that are critical to safe service. Where things that, you think about like a leaky faucet or a leaky roof, it's not a good way to effectively manage your budget, but it's not safety critical in the same way that.
So could you produce a schedule and just a reasonable level of detail, I don't know exactly what that level would be, that kind of shows you what's in the 77 and then what's kind of below the line, and then, that's.
Yeah, I think as we get through this, we have some more information about what we would like to be able to fund, similar to what Holly shared on the operating side, which is really that deferred maintenance that we would like to be able to bring into.
Okay, well, we can come back to it, but I still think it'd be useful just to understand what's above and below the line, simple version of it. Okay, thanks.
And then, of course, as you can appreciate, John, there's the contingencies for the unexpected
Yeah.
things that happen, like the catenary, the storms in the catenary.
Right, we have the sort of difference between our long-range planning, what we expect to happen, and then
The
as
things
you're
that do
saying,
happen,
things
yeah.
that are unexpected,
Yeah.
or there's also things about, if you're gonna do a contract, you're gonna disrupt service. How do you bundle those, turn them into real projects? There's lots of considerations, but I think take the point.
Thank you.
Just as a little bit of a reminder, and what are the projects that we're talking about when we talk about the Baltimore Core State of Good Repair? These are some of our largest currently funded State of Good Repair projects. Light rail modernization program, that investment in new rail cars, as well as stations, power, maintenance facilities for the light rail, our annual mobility vehicle replacements, bus replacements. We have a significant project to do system-wide elevator rehabilitation, drastically needed. We have annual investments in light rail and metro systems, as well as maintenance of way, the track and skyway. And then of course our metro rail cars and train control system. So looking ahead at bringing FY32 into the budget, using the capital needs inventory as our guide, our priorities for that FY32 State of Good Repair budget amounts to $742 million. That breaks down as $450 million that's needed to continue ongoing projects. So light rail modernization program is funded through 2031 in the current budget. It's going to continue beyond then. So when we build in the 2032 budget, we need to prioritize bringing in the budget to continue that program. That's true on core bus and mobility vehicle procurements, elevator program. A lot of these big investment programs we have continue into 2032, and that's sort of the first priority in our budget. Then there's $292 million in additional SGR priority needs. John, I think is what you're sort of talking about in terms of the gap between what's funded today and what those total needs are. This is not getting us to 100%, but this is addressing the critical SGR needs that we would like to be able to bring into the budget in 2032. Also looking at, these projects, these are multi-year projects. So if we got all of the money to fix the catenary in FY27, we wouldn't be able to spend that money. We have to do the design and the procurement, bring the contract, like these are multi-year sort of ramp ups in order to catch up with deferred maintenance needs. You can see in the table on the right how that $292 million in additional SGR projects breaks down by mode and what some of the key projects are. So on Metro, leak remediation is a huge thing. We all know from our own homes, water infiltration is not a good thing. So we want to catch up and ideally get ahead of that. There's work on the track and guideway, third rail systems that's needed. Stations investments have been, again, not the most safety critical, so we haven't been able to keep up with those, but there's a lot of concrete work, platform work, those sorts of things, even station lighting, stairways, doors, just some of the station basics that really we need to get to. There's elevated sections of the metro have giant concrete piers, so quite a bit on the metro system. On the light rail system, the needs are smaller because a lot of things are included in the light rail modernization program. But we do have some additional catenary needs even before this storm damage. Some additional needs to invest in the catenary system and our passenger and employee communication systems that are not part of the light rail modernization program. On the bus side, this is largely focused on our bus facilities. So one of our top priorities every year is bus replacements. Keeping those on schedule is sort of fundamental for transit agencies. So the additional needs on the bus side are more about our bus facilities, making sure we have HVAC, heating and cooling for our employees, roof and window replacements, bus washes that are functional, fall protection that meets current OSHA standards. And then there's a lot of industry sort of modernization that we could bring in terms of parts maintenance that would pay off on the operating budget if we were able to get some of those upgrades within our bus facilities. And then of course there's agency-wide our IT systems. As you all remember, we had a cyber incident almost a year ago, so we've learned a lot through that where we'd like to be able to do some additional IT investments and upgrading scheduling systems and things like that on the mobility system.
So one second, I don't want to get, well, I guess to some extent the weeds are necessary, but so just so I understand, 26 to 31, 88%, whatever the number is, 77% we talked about, sorry, 77% are funded. And then, but that's 31. Now the whole thing that's going on here is adding a 32 column to the CTP, right?
Yeah.
And now you're suggesting that you would request 742 million in Baltimore Core Services in 32.
Yes.
Does that
For state of good repair.
for state of good repair, yeah. Is that what is the relationship of that 742 to the 23% gap in the prior years? Are you trying to make it all up in FY 32?
No, we're trying to move in that direction. We're trying to catch up on deferred maintenance. So you can see here the average annual need in 2032 to 2035 for state of good repair is 827 million. But what we look at as we're looking at requests for funding and bringing projects in is what we actually can deliver.
Yeah.
So it's actual projects. And again, to the we can't drop money in our budget and expect
Yeah.
it to spend tomorrow.
Yeah.
We have to be able to ramp up. So that's why this number is not catching up on that 23% that's not funded today and everything that's needed in 32. It's something that happens over time, catching up on deferred maintenance.
So that gap continues to widen.
Well, no, we would want to see that gap moving in this getting smaller.
Okay.
So we want to be catching up, but we're not going to catch up in 1 year.
And so could money be sprinkled back into the out years of the CTP as well? If there were a windfall or a new source, I know you gotta imagine all that, but you don't have to wait till 2032. You could start catching up in 2029, 2030, subject to your reasonable condition, which is don't put money in the budget we can't spend. But assuming you could spend it and there were money that showed up, because I hope we're gonna have more, I'm really hoping, trusting that we're gonna have more revenues than the current CTP shows sometime before 2032. So let's assume, I don't wanna wait till 2032. I wanna try and start addressing these gaps. And this is just state of good repair. So theoretically, you could be pouring that money into those what are now planning years.
Yeah.
sooner than 2030.
We would like the flexibility to be able to accelerate dollars, to start spending on those dollars sooner. It's the constraint of, are those dollars there? And to your point, if there was new revenue, maybe hopefully they would be there before 32, but
Okay.
We would ideally like to accelerate.
And then my other last question for the moment, if you go back to the slide you were last on, the last slide. Yeah, so you've, your table on the right is 292, right? And you've got the 292 bullet on the left.
Yeah.
You've highlighted 4 sub-bullets of various things. Could you provide us a sort of comprehensive list of what makes up the 292 instead of just picking a few items?
Yes, this is.
No, I
put it
no-
onto a slide.
It's no problem.
Sure.
I'm just asking.
Yes.
I think it would be useful for us to understand what makes up the 292, just like it would be useful to understand what makes up the 23%. And I know there's overlap, but we can tease it out, but, okay? Thank you.
We have, Commissioner Boyd asked a question, and I'm trying to read it here. And this is, she's directing it at you, Madam Secretary. She asked, what is the overall budget financial outlook for FY 28 for MDOT as a whole? Looking at the graph that was up here earlier at MTA only. And how does MTA compare? And it's 2 parts. And the other part is, as already referenced, there are competing priorities among different modes, which is often also present in the budget. How's it being approached, reconciled internally at MDOT at this stage in the CTP budget process?
That is a really good question. It is a delicate balancing act, and it's a combination of looking across our different modes and assessing needs and being guided sort of by the governor's priorities, operating needs, and then what amounts remain in capital and how we allocate those, finite capital dollars. So, and it's a extensive discussion with the Office of the Secretary and each of the modes individually, and then it's a discussion with the modal leaders and TSO leaders collectively to make the best decisions we can about how to allocate those finite dollars. So we are in that process, and obviously you see it when we put out the draft CTP in September, but we're working through all of those challenges right now. Our budget for this year, our total budget for this year is comparable to what we think the total budget was essentially for last year. But the needs that you'll see in the CTP will look different from what it looked like last year.
I happen to be familiar with that question, so but for her benefit, she appreciates it.
She can, I mean, she's certainly
Yeah,
if she's able to unmute, she can follow up or ask.
Yeah.
Blakey, are you available to speak or not?
She's been in and out of the airports, so.
Oh, so
Yeah.
she texted you? Okay.
Thank you.
If she,
No, she says she can't speak.
oh, okay. Gotcha.
Okay, so moving on from state of good repair, core service area enhancements, really excited. We have some construction beginning this year on projects that have been several years in the making. So the RAISE East-West Transit Priority Corridor, this is a $50 million discretionary grant project to improve bus service on existing bus corridors for buses to be able to move more reliably and quicker in some places with dedicated bus lanes and queue jumps and things, as well as shelters and rider amenities. That'll go to construction this year. We're also installing additional bus shelters and doing ADA stop upgrades. And this may be a little bit optimistic. I try to stay optimistic. We're working with Baltimore City DOT on some quick build safety and operational improvements for the Howard Street corridor that are low dollar, but I think high impact for light rail operations and safety, that we're hoping to be able to do some of that work this year as well. And we're just continuing to build a pipeline of enhancement projects where we really look at discretionary grants for the funding source for those types of things. And then very familiar to everyone, our core service area expansion priorities. State of good repair, as I started with, is the foundation of our capital program, but we're continuing to work on the planning for the red line, which Holly spoke to a little bit, and the 5th bus division as our top expansion priorities. There is $25 million dedicated and accelerated to the point earlier of, can we spend those dollars sooner? We were able to accelerate with Secretary support, the funding for acquiring and beginning design on the 5th bus division, which is the centerpiece of our Be More bus.
Well, can I ask you, what, just knowing what we know now, what should we expect to see for Red Line and 5th Bus Division in the upcoming CTP? I mean, there was, you can remind, I don't remember the numbers, you can remind us, there was planning money for the Red Line. Some was spent, some was, I don't remember exactly what was in what column, but I'm just wondering if you.
So we had $150 million for the red line allocated in the last couple of years to work through the planning and NEPA effort. We're continuing to spend on that, and that funding will be there for that progress to continue. That's my expectation. And on Be More Bus, the $25 million is supporting the acquisition and getting underway with design, which is now underway. So that is carrying us through this stage of the project. So we're able to continue work on those projects, knowing that those large investments that are ultimately needed for completing those projects is something that is probably needs further discussion before those are going to appear in the CTP.
Right. New revenues. Okay.
Also touching on here, the Baltimore area lots, state of good repair needs. So the lots, we do a statewide transit asset management plan to look at the state of good repair needs across the state's lot systems. From that plan, the average capital investment needed for just the Baltimore area lots is over $15 million. Our capital grants provided through MTA have been about half of that, 7.6 million. Most of that is funding replacement vehicles for the lot systems. There are some facility investments, very small amount occasionally for system and IT type of upgrades. Local governments contribute quite a bit to match and overmatch those state grants on the lot system. Also, just touching on the operating side of the lots here, our FY26 operating grants for the lots were $16.5 million. Those grants are growing proportionately with the federal funding sources now through the implementation of the funding allocation formula, and local governments are significantly overmatching and contributing to the operating costs for the lots.
Did we implement the new formula?
Yes.
And it's still based on, what's the baseline criteria for the formula? How are you taking population into consideration?
Is similar to the way the federal dollars are allocated. It includes, I believe, the population within the service area of the fixed route system. Happy to follow up because I don't have it memorized. So this is the summary of everything that I presented for the Baltimore core budget, core area capital budget request. So on the state of good repair side, continuing our multi-year projects, addressing some of the needs we talked about. We currently have in the CTP $2.32 billion funded. Our request is $742 million for FY32. System enhancement. These are, additional dedicated bus lanes, transit signal priority expansion, additional bus shelters, passenger communication systems, generally sort of small things we can do to keep improving the rider experience, improving reliability, making incremental improvements to our system. We have about $100 million funded currently. The East-West Raise project that I mentioned is the biggest piece of that. We would love to be able to do additional enhancements with $30 million. But again, those are some of those nice to have things. Administration of MTA, so this is our capital staffing, IT systems. We need to do inspection programs to see how things are performing and not be surprised by emergencies. We do quite a bit of performance management and, studies, various things, all of our administrative costs. So the request there is $54 million, cover all of that. And then the Baltimore area lots capital. Currently, we have $68 million in the budget. We would like to be able to increase that contribution to help the lots catch up on their deferred or overdue bus replacements. We hear about from our lots quite a bit. If the state was able to contribute additional to the lots capital programs. So the total of all of that on again, for the Baltimore core functions is $841 million. And we've identified separate from that, our two expansion priorities, the Red Line and the 5th Bus Division. John, you asked about this. We have $144 million currently funded for those two things. If we were looking at fully funding the construction of those two projects, of what we could do if we were to, continue hit the ground running, just be able to complete those projects with no budget, slowing us, budget constraint to slow down the performance of those projects, we would be looking for over $1 billion for those expansion projects in the budget period.
This is just trying to get my head straight. Is the $2.79 billion number in the current allocation the same as the sum of the numbers, the points connected by the line that says Baltimore Region funding available on a prior slide? You can go back to it, it's easier.
No, because the CNI, the chart that you're looking at, does not include administration or lots.
Okay.
So this is more of a complete snapshot of all of the components of MTA's budget. The CNI is focused on state of good repair and it doesn't. So I'll move on. We have a couple of slides for, on the.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
just,
okay.
so if you went back, let me ask you the question differently then. Is the 2.3 billion and the 97 million the same as the sum of the points on the chart?
Those numbers would be the same as the green line. No.
Yeah, as the
black line.
The black line.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Now I finally
I know, it's a lot of numbers. Okay, I'll move on to similar information. I'll try to be brief on the statewide side, just to give you a complete picture. So this is the MARC system, Northeast Corridor major projects, and Purple Line availability payments. The CNI needs for those components. In the first 5 years are $828 million. We are 98% funded. A lot of these are contractually required things, so you can't fund a percentage of the Purple Line availability payments or the contracts with Amtrak. So that is a key factor in some of these budget items. And we look at 2032 needs. There's that purple component is the Purple Line availability payments. That's once the Purple Line is operational. Our contract with the P3 operator. We have a $54 million annual commitment to Amtrak for the Baltimore, the BMP tunnel program and the Susquehanna River Rail Bridge, the state's contribution to those projects. And then in addition to that, there's $87 million in state of good repair need and potentially up to $100 million in enhancement need for the statewide transit systems.
Hey, before you go, can I just ask you, the difference, tell me what the difference is. This is a 98% for that region versus when we go back to the Baltimore Port, this is 77%. What's the big difference?
A lot of it is that these are contractual commitments. So when we're looking at managing a budget constraint that doesn't meet all of our needs, if we have contractual commitments with Amtrak for an annual payment for these programs, or we have contractual commitments with the P3 partner for the Purple Line, like we are contractually obligated to make those payments, so those things are fully funded. when we get into the state of good repair programs, that's where we are looking to balance those dollars across a larger number of needs. There's also FRA regulations on some of the mark system things where you cannot run that service if you're not meeting the FRA requirements for like positive train control.
So are those requirements more stringent than the requirements we have here in the Baltimore region? So they get more funding and have more requirements than we do here in the Baltimore region?
So when we're sort of taking that from the MTA standpoint, when we're taking that criticality, how do we take the dollars that are available to us and ensure that we are putting ourselves in the best position we can be to continue safe service on all of our transit systems? If there's a contractual commitment or a regulatory requirement that says you know, this falls apart, you can't run this service if you don't make this commitment, that's going to rank high on the list.
And the same is true for Baltimore, for any of our services,
Right.
regardless of whether they're providing, it's gotta meet the contractual and legal requirements.
Right, that's why I was asking, are their requirements more stringent than the requirements? Are these equal requirements for
Well,
running the service as it relates
I
to
think
safety?
it's primarily that it's just, it's more contracts now.
Right, the way
So I
that we
think the
operate
difference that you
service.
see up here is in the operating budget, so our operating budget has continued to be fully funded, which again is something that agencies across the country aren't seeing. And those contractual commitments hit up here, so you're just seeing it in two different places. So the contractual commitments in Baltimore are primarily associated with operating, and the ones down there are a lot of times associated with capital because of the nature of the service that we're providing here.
I think we probably have to dig in a little deeper to really pull this, but I guess I would just say it is objectively true that if we have a contractual obligation, we have to fulfill it. But no one made us enter into that contract. I mean, we've made a choice to enter into that contract somewhere along the way, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying, I think at the end of the day, it becomes sort of it's kind of a weak argument to say, well, those are contractual obligations. It's like, yes, and we have to honor them because they're contractual obligations. But, you know,
We work closely with the Secretary's office on the affordability of contractual obligations before we enter into them.
I mean, I think what we're talking about here is, I mean, on Mark and Purple Line, right, like, we don't fund those contracts, we don't have Mark service, right? Like, we will be in breach of contract with Amtrak, and that service will end up stopping at that point, right? Like, I think those are the
Yeah.
things, and, you know, just you're entering into
In-
contracts
in a-
50 years ago, right?
in a-
Like, we're.
in a broadly historical and theoretical way, right? Someone could have said 10 years ago, you know, if you enter into that contract with Mark, at the end of the day, it might cause you to have to starve the Baltimore system. So let's think about it before we enter into that contract. 10 years later, we say, well, we have a contract with Mark. It's like, yeah, because someone 10 years ago decided that was a good idea, and it wasn't probably a perfectly good idea. But that has consequences. And I just think, you know, going forward, to say, well, look, it's a contract. Like, no one's suggesting we should get out of the contract, but I just think you have to think about how did we end up here in the first place? And I know it's more believe me, I know it's more complicated than that. I know, but you know, it's just hard to see 98% SGR in one region and 77% SGR in the other, and not want to understand exactly what's going on. Again, I know it's more complicated than we're making it, but I just raised that as a point.
Right, I mean, we don't have the ability to go back in time and.
I
Well,
understand.
and I think that goes to the point of how we collectively plan for the future. And to your point about ethics, so we can't change the decisions of the past, but we can take the lessons learned from the decisions of the past as we think about how we allocate our dollars in the future.
Absolutely, and I mean, it would be crazy to assign responsibility for where we are in that respect to the current secretary or MTA administrator or governor. Just, these are not, they are the ultimate outcome of decisions that have been made in the past. And I think you're right. The question is, okay, what do we do about that now? Is exactly what you're saying. I
Like how
completely
do we
agree.
plan more smartly for the
Yeah,
future and needs
absolutely.
of Baltimore region, yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So just a snapshot of the types of state of good repair investments we make on the MARC system. We talked about this a little bit, so just very briefly, it's maintaining the vehicles, the stations, platforms, positive train control system, and contributing to Amtrak and CSX maintenance of the right of way that they own that we pay to be patrons on, or pay to use. And I've mentioned the major Northeast Corridor projects that you're a funding partner in on behalf of the state of Maryland. The key growth priorities on the MARC system, again, very similar, focused on state of good repair, but there are a few key expansion-oriented priorities. The Penn Camden Connector is one of these. This would allow, this is a historic rail corridor that exists that would allow select Penn Line trains ultimately to terminate at Camden Station. It also addresses MARC train storage and daily maintenance needs that are currently handled at Penn Station and at Union Station. Amtrak is increasing service at those stations. We will lose the ability to do those functions at their properties and are going to need our own storage. And then the Silver Spring Turnback Facility is a way to allow us to increase service on the Brunswick line in Montgomery County and up to Frederick and Western Maryland without needing additional capacity at Union Terminal, which is capacity constrained. So we would, those patrons would be able to connect to the metro system at Silver Spring for access to downtown DC. And then we have some planning stage work at Martin State Airport Station and some ADA improvements of additional stations. So bringing that together, MTA's overall budget request summary, within the 6-year program currently, across all of MTA's transit services, 88% of our state of good repair needs are funded for both Baltimore core services as well as MARC line availability payments. The funding need rises in future years due to our transit assets reaching the end of their useful life, and also those that rising baseline of contractual costs that we just talked a little bit about. So for 2032, our budget request for state of good repair and our sort of baseline overhead administrative costs is $1.138 billion. That breaks down to the numbers I've sort of built up as we've been talking. So I won't repeat those numbers. We remain focused on prioritizing state of good repair, prioritizing safety critical projects and service critical projects to keep our transit services operating, and while advancing the key priorities for enhancement and expansion. We also look at making sure we have the capacity to match discretionary grants. We want to be able to pursue discretionary grants where those are available. So we need to be positioned to do that. The key expansion projects are summarized here: the Red Line and the 5th Bus Division for the Baltimore region, and the Penn Camden Connector and Brunswick Line expansion for the MARCs.
Can you please remind us of the next decision for the Red Line, when that is happening, the timeline for that? And then also for Be More Bus and the 5th Bus Division, can you please remind us of what would be if you had the funding, what would be the ideal timeline on that?
Red Line.
It was Red Line. Yeah, for Red Line, we are looking to make a decision on path forward for mode, probably early 2027. So that is the narrative.
And 5th Bus Division, we are working on the preliminary design now. We expect to be at close to that 30% design milestone next September. So at that point, we would ideally have additional funding to continue.
You said this September or next?
Next.
Okay.
Yeah. I wish we were that fast.
Yeah, that's why I was like.
What does that represent in design speak in terms of where we would be on design?
30%.
Did you say
30% design September 2027 is what our team is working on. And we've we're working through a delivery method analysis now to figure out, and most likely just, the way those types of projects goes. Most likely, we would not want to do 100% design in-house without being able to bring in the contractor. So we would look at alternative delivery, which would mean we would want to have certainty on the construction.
Any sense how long it takes to get from 30% to 100%?
So if we were to go alternative delivery, we would sort of have a pause for procurement. And then a year or two before a contract, sort of depends on if we were to do design build or CMAR. But it's, I don't know, probably a year for procurement. And
Is the time associated with getting to 30%, if you had to do like a pie chart of the reason, is it because that's how long it takes someone to do it? Is it because that's how long it takes to procure someone to do it? Or what's the sort of, and
so we
go
have
ahead.
on-call architecture and engineer contracts that we are using to get to 30% design. So there is a negotiation with our on-call contractors, but we don't have to do any. So we're underway now on 30% design. And there's a number of steps involved in that. If you want to go fast, you got to start slow to make sure you get the programming right, the layout right. You don't
Yeah.
step into NEPA and permitting issues you don't need to. So there's an intentional, stepwise process to get through 30% design.
Yeah.
But it's underway now.
I'm always surprised at how long it takes. 14 more months to get to 30% just seems like a lot.
I mean, think about the scale of construction dollars.
Yeah,
We do
but
a
I mean,
$500 million project.
this isn't the first one anybody's built in the known universe.
No, but everyone is designed for the specifics of the site. And we did recently do design on potential reconstruction of Eastern Division. So the team is using what we learned from that process. That's the baseline of space programming. So I think that is helping the team move more quickly.
Are there other questions for Kate? We spent a lot of time on this item, but I think it's necessarily so. Questions for,
I said definitely necessary.
yeah, questions for Kate, Administrator or the Secretary? Anybody? If you could follow up with some of the details that we've talked about, because I think it would be helpful to us in sort of forming our advocacy and our understanding around them. That would be great. And I just want to thank you on behalf of all of us, Kate, for your, really obvious expertise and commitment to this. Thank you very, very much.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the priority letters. In April of this year, MDOT received 4 new priority letters from the region. They're shown on the screen here for your benefit, and I'd like to take some time to talk about what the local governments are asking for in these letters. And each is, as you know, each jurisdiction has its own transportation issues, needs, but I think by reviewing these all together, you get a good sense of something that's more important than just the individual requests. And I'm happy to say, after I've read these, that the letters do demonstrate a remarkable degree of regional alignment in transit priorities, needed investments, partnerships, and policy changes to improve the region's mobility. Just as a process refresher, each year MDOT asks the counties and municipalities to submit their priority letters identifying their highest priorities as they develop the PCP and for consideration in the CTP. So we're in the midst of that process now. And they submit these through an online portal now that MDOT has set up, and traditional method of sending a letter. These are endorsed by the local government and the legislature, supported by the legislative members in the jurisdiction. So they form the official record for these B&B. Viewed collectively, there are several consistent transit themes emerge. First, jurisdictions consistently call for greater investment in lots and expanding the regional bus services. Second, they're looking for continued commitment with major capital investments, including rail modernization and major new transit projects. Third, they emphasize transit urban development and the need to leverage transit investment around the station areas to support housing and economic development. And finally, they call for the planning of feature high capacity transit in through corridors throughout the region. While these specific projects differ, the themes appear repeatedly throughout the letters. And they suggest that there's largely good alignment across the region. Good news. I think it'd be useful to dig into some of these a little bit further. The first major priority centers on transit operations and regional connectivity. They're not simply requesting additional service with their own jurisdictions. They're asking MDOT and MTA to help strengthen the regional system to connect places around the region, connect employment centers like Fort Meade, BWI, Trade Point Atlantic, and downtown Columbia. Likewise, many of the proposed connections across jurisdictional boundaries. So they want to see linkages between communities like Annapolis, Columbia, Laurel, Essex, Halethorpe, and Towson. Operations alone aren't enough. The letters also emphasize the importance of delivering major capital investments that will shape the region's transit system. For example, Baltimore City requested implementation of the Be More Bus initiative, talking about continually to advance the Red Line, restoration of planning for the North-South corridor, and ongoing modernization of the light rail system. They do have a common objective of maintaining momentum on transformative investments, so improve mobility, increase reliability, expand accessibility, and support long-term economic development. And collectively, they indicate that the local governments are seeking not only a preservation of existing assets, but also continued expansion of the regional's transit capacity. So looking beyond today's projects, the priority letters also focus on preparing future transit investments. Several jurisdictions did identify corridors where additional planning, feasibility analysis, and operational improvements are needed for higher capacity transit. These include US 29, US 1, Essex, Trade Point, Atlantic, some of the others I've mentioned. Importantly, local governments aren't only asking for construction funding, but they're requesting help with planning, design, corridor improvements that are necessary to position these corridors for BRT and other high capacity transit investments. And their long-term perspective, if you can boil it down, is preparing today's corridors for so they can receive tomorrow's transit system investments. Taken together, I think I feel that again they tell a consistent regional story. They're asking MDOT and MTA to invest across the entire transit spectrum. So from sustaining lots, operations, improving regional transit connections, delivering major capital projects, planning the next generation of high capacity projects. And while the individual projects differ, the underlying message is consistent. And that's what I wanted to cover, so that we can have a conversation about the next topic on the agenda.
Yeah.
I don't know if there
Well,
are any
thanks for this.
questions.
Are there, I mean, the people associated with these priority letters are here, at least with respect to their own jurisdictions. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything. And Don, I don't remember, I know you have a screenshot here, but I don't remember when you circulated the actual letters to the commission.
Yes, we did last week.
You did last time, good, so, perfect. It's worth, and, you know, I have to say that over the last 3, 4, 5 years, the overall coalescing around transit priorities has been, I think, notable. This is another, to me, another, you know, sort of data point, more evidence that there's coalescing. I mean, obviously, some of these projects are more relevant to one jurisdiction than another, that last slide indicates, but for the fundamental stuff, there's widespread agreement, it seems. But do representatives of local jurisdictions want to say anything on the subject about their letters or generally?
Hi, good. Can you hear me? This is Trey Dickerson from Howard County. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Trey, go right ahead.
Yes, I just want to just emphasize that the importance of US 29 is an extremely important corridor for us, along with US 1. We've been working very hard to make sure that these corridors get a lot of attention, and I know that not just from a local standpoint, but from a regional standpoint, that they're both very important to Howard County and also our partners, our other jurisdictions. So I just want to emphasize that.
Thank you, Trey. Other jurisdictions?
Well, I think that our letters speak for themselves. Anne Arundel County is always willing to contribute money to try to jumpstart some things, move them further along in the process. So we appreciate that partnership. But we continue to struggle with getting people around the county and then these connections to large employment bases like Fort Meade and over into Columbia. So that kind of cross-region, the connections to New Carrollton, the connections to Baltimore are continue to be ever growing and even more important. So.
Thanks.
I think if I were Aaron Tremarchio, we're sitting here, you'd think the same thing is that getting those individuals effectively integrated by Atlantic is extremely critical, because I've witnessed firsthand buses that come in from Pennsylvania. It's disheartening to say the least. Then combined with Key Bridge has escalated the problem there. So anything we can do to help that.
I would add, I think Christine kind of hit the nail on the head about the gateways, right, where people are coming in and out from other counties, other jurisdictions. We experienced that between Baltimore City and Baltimore County on I-83. And additionally, we've experienced a significant amount of truck traffic in the city now because of the Key Bridge. And already we're seeing infrastructure issues like on our roadways just because of the weight, the traffic and things like that. So I would say some of those things are just hypercritical things we wouldn't obviously maybe have put as a priority in our CTP letter in years past, but looking at the impact on roadways, like height cameras and things like that, and people just doing all sorts of rigmarole, I guess, to move themselves about the city, with the bridge not being, a main access point. So I would certainly say like the immediate infrastructure damage we're seeing on our roads.
Not to mention which the secretary will tell you is the increase in our temperatures, which is we put a heavy truck on asphalt and it doesn't help things at all.
Right.
Do you want anything?
I will say this year, your response back, the way that you outlined in detail I know for Baltimore County, I'm assuming you did for every other county as well. The responses to our particular requests was different and more transparent, I would say. for Baltimore County in particular, get some feedback fairly quickly about what was sensitive. And, it was eye-opening to see that. So I think there's the secretary for being willing to give that feedback. It definitely gives us talking points when we come to see.
When you
you.
come with it.
That's
Talk
just
about
it.
it.
Yeah, exactly. See you next month.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, exactly, almost exactly.
Yep.
I would say that the letters are clear that they want to have a good working partnership with each local jurisdictions wants to have a good partnership with MDOT. And I think, kind of as we sit around the table collectively, kind of, if we all can recognize that, maybe we all can work together to advance some things, because I know that there's only so much money and there's only so much energy to get things done. And those things that you agree upon, you can definitely advance. So it's helpful to kind of keep an eye on.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you all very much. Thanks for the work, and those letters are just critically important. So
Yeah.
thanks to the local governments and representatives. Don, I'm gonna turn it back to you for the last item before public participation. And I'm just gonna say in advance, I was maybe struck a little bit when Mike was talking about strategic plans being a eulogy, and I thought, wait till you get to the final annual report outline.
I'm not sure that was the best analogy.
Well, that wasn't a eulogy, but I really, as I said earlier, we've been doing these annual reports. I think they've been good, combination of a good record of what we've done, as well as in each case, sort of, here are the challenges that we still identify. I think it's even more so the case here that we want, this is a bit of I'll say valedictory, sort of a valedictory sort of thing, where you're like, look, we're being superseded by a board that I think most of us, if not all of us, believe is a step in the right direction to enhance the things that we've begun to do, and that transit advocates and elected officials around the state think needs to be done. So I take tremendous pride in the foundation that's been laid by this group. We can talk about that more at the last meeting, but in talking to the staff about this report, we wanted to be, do all the normal things. We did this, we did that, maybe looking back, not just over a year, but over a couple of years. And then also trying to lay a foundation so that if you were on the next board, you would pick it up and you would get sort of a pretty good sense of what the issues were and what was done, what's left undone, and so on. So what I asked Don to do here, I mean, you will see before it's published, before it's finalized, the full version of this report, which I would like to we will finalize at the September meeting. But what I wanted him to do was to summarize sort of findings and recommendations, I guess in a way, stuff that's a little bit more editorial than just historic, so that folks here could weigh in on those. So Don will go through them. I did highlight for you in the email. Please take a look at them in advance. I hope folks did. So we have a little time for some discussion today, but what I'm going to be asking for is feedback on these, including any comments, edits, omissions, things that commissioners think, hey, we really, shouldn't we include this? Didn't we talk about, wouldn't it be helpful to say this or to include this? So when you're reading it, when you're listening to Don, if you could just kind of think about it from that perspective, about the message we're trying to send here to our successors. That's kind of the framework that I'm striving for. So with that, I'll let Don go through the slides, which hopefully you have a chance to look at.
And just to add on that, the prior presentation was really kind of set the context for these, the current context for these have to resonate. And I hope that helped. So I'd like to provide you a little overview of the structure and general content of what our final annual report should have in it. From my perspective, the chairman. And I see this as a report, as more of a summary of your work over the past several years and not just an annual report, which it had been, just telling folks what we did for the past year. I'd like to see it document the commission's accomplishments and recommendations, and help ensure that the BRTC, as the BRTC sunsets, and a new governance structure takes its place, that the knowledge, the lessons, priorities that you developed aren't lost, and provide some continuity and connect what we've learned here and with what comes next. The timing of this report is pushed up. Normally due December 1st, it's now due October 1st, due to the Chapter 420 requirements. And rather than allowing the years of work to end with the commission itself, I'd like to see the report preserve the institutional record and capture not only what the commission accomplished, but also the issues that remain unresolved and deserve continued discussion. In many ways, this is both a final report and a transition roadmap, as the chairman outlined. So, getting into the content a little bit, we've got several areas. As I see it, the report begins with documenting the history of the BRTC, kind of how we got to where we are today, its roles, its activities, and it'll discuss major accomplishments. And over its existence, the BRTC established itself as the region's first independent body dedicated to regional transit oversight. And through reports, recommendations, legislative testimony, comment letters on the CTP, working groups, and analysis, the commission consistently brought greater transparency and public accountability to transit decision-making. My hope is that the report can make clear that many of the region's most important transit challenges remain unfinished. These include the state of the repair backlog, long-term capital and operating funding, delivery of major projects like the Red Line and Be More Bus, implementation of the regional transit plan, student transportation issues, commuter rail integration, and future governance of regional rail systems. Many of the things we talked about today. I expect the report can provide some historical context for these issues, summarize the commission's activities, and include an appendix containing major work products and important correspondence for future reference. I expect the report will turn from looking backward to looking forward. For the two successor boards, the central recommendation is continuity. A recommendation preserving the institutional knowledge that has been developed over the past several years, while maintaining strong public engagement and meaningful stakeholder jurisdictions is fitting.
Sorry. You hurt yourself?
Somebody stepped on it.
Trying to be polite.
I think the report can also emphasize what the board should fully exercise their review authorities provided under statute, particularly in respect to budgets, capital program, and major service changes. The report can also recommend close coordination between the Core Services Board and the Commuter Services Advisory Board, especially on service planning, transfers, customer information, and regional performance. And finally, the report would encourage continued collaboration with BMC and partners on the Rail Authority study that Chapter 420 recommended, with sustained attention on project delivery, state of good repair investments, and long-term funding. The report could also include some recommendations directed at the General Assembly. There's a list of them here. Chief among these would be the need for ongoing and sustained investment, as you heard from the Secretary, both in capital and operating. The Commission has discussed in the past how deferred investment have allowed the state of good repair backlog to grow substantially, increasing future costs while affecting service reliability today. The report can also recommend ensuring that the successor boards have sufficient staffing, technical expertise, and independent analytical capacity to effectively carry out their statutory responsibilities. Looking ahead, the General Assembly will play an important role in overseeing the implementation of the Rail Authority study, strengthening coordination between new boards, and ensuring the equity remains central to transit investment and service decisions. That generally is what I expect to have within the current report. We have an outline that we can share that perhaps you can use for thinking about Chairman suggested, which is additional items or changing some of the items that are in there. But this report is going to reflect several years of your work. So, hopefully it'll build a stronger regional transit system. I don't know if you have any questions about what's going to be there.
Well, again, the floor is open. We'll just take a few minutes now if anybody has any immediate reactions. This is not, window's not closing on this. We will give you, we'll figure out, Don will send something around asking for comments by a date certain so that he can produce a final draft. But wanted to give you sort of the thrust of the thing and welcome comments from any of you. We'll also be sharing it. MTA is seeing it here, MTA will be seeing it again. We'd love to hear from MTA, the Secretary's office, about ways in which this report can be as constructive as possible in terms of the next steps for transit governance by both the Core Services Board and the Commuter Services Advisory. So does anybody want to take a few minutes, questions, comments, suggestions, immediate reactions? Happy to hear it. If not, again, we'll have a window for you to do that afterwards.
I think it's great, well, ambitious, but great.
Hopefully not a eulogy.
No.
Others? Okay. I just wanted to make sure you had a chance to see this, and I wanted to make sure it was done in public session for people to have a sense of where it might be headed. Don will get back to you with protocols for any additional thoughts or suggestions you might want to make. Suggestions are welcome for additions. Suggestions are welcome for subtractions. Anything you see that you want to react to in terms of substance, tone, please feel free. And then the next thing you'll see is, in advance of the September meeting, a full-blown report, which I would hope that we will then approve at the September meeting as kind of one of the last things that we'll do as a commission, swan song, as the vice chair says. Okay, Don, thank you very much for
Yeah,
all your work
thank
in
you.
putting this together. I think it's a really good framework.
We do have the public participation. And are there other questions? Some?
I think Eric.
Eric,
Is that okay?
Norton from
Yeah, we'll turn to the public participation portion, and for those anybody online, if you wish to participate or say anything to the commission, please make sure you let the staff know. If you're here, obviously. If you're online, just put something in the chat and we'll get to you.
There was one question in the chat.
Yes, do that now.
Yeah, we'll get to it. We'll do that right away. Yes, sir, please.
Morning, everyone. My name is, or afternoon now? Yeah. Eric Norton, I'm the Director of Policy and Programs with the Central Maryland Transportation Alliance. Good to see you all again. As usual, it's not a BRTC meeting unless the Transportation Alliance gets up and says something that is unpopular. So that's what I'm here to do. But before I do that, I'll butter you up and say thank you very much. I'm personally sad to see this board be sunsetting and becoming something else. I've said it before and I'll repeat it. Having the BRTC has been a huge improvement for advocates and the public in getting some sunlight on MTA and its budget, and the reports you've done, the advocacy you all have done, it's been a game changer for transit in the Baltimore region. So I just want to say thank you again for all the work you've done. I know it's a lot of time and effort to participate in these meetings. It takes time out of your day jobs. So I just wanted to express appreciation on behalf of myself and also from Central Maryland Transportation Alliance for all the work you've done over the years. And maybe I'll write like a real eulogy for the September meeting since you've been talking about eulogy so much.
Yeah, it's gonna haunt me now.
So the unpopular thing I will say is there's a lot of talk about the budget this year and MTA's budget and what's funded, what's not, what's in there, how tight things are. And I just want to point out a few things and talk of, we need more revenue. Question often always turns towards we need more revenue. I want to mention that Maryland has, going into the Transportation Trust Fund, from numbers that are publicly available as best to my knowledge that I can put together, the Transportation Trust Fund has more revenue in the last year than it's ever had in the history of the Transportation Trust Fund. Now, that might not account for inflation and the cost of things, so maybe purchasing power is not quite all there. But in terms of real dollars, we have more money in the Transportation Trust Fund than we've ever had before. CTP is, higher and higher pretty much every year. We spend on total in Maryland, all of MDOT and the Transportation Authority, about $8 billion a year in transportation. And I think at some point we have to ask ourselves, how much more can we go back to the public for? How much more revenue can we keep asking for? We've done it in 2024 and 2025. And I think we need to start asking ourselves, what are our priorities as a state? There are things that we're funding, MDOT, the state are funding, that are in some of these counties' priority letters that I think should not be priorities when we have such a large state of good repair backlog, and especially for transit and Baltimore's transit investment. We're widening 97. One more lane won't fix it on 97, and we're doing it anyway. There's other projects, Maryland 2, Maryland 3. Sorry for Baltimore County, Dolefield Boulevard interchange, all these things. All these things that we're adding to a system that's fully built out. If you have a job, or if you have a car in the Baltimore region, you can get any job you want in 60 minutes or less by driving, okay? We can get, job access is done. We can drive anywhere. If you don't have a car, you can only get to 7.5% of jobs by transit. That's where our focus should be, expanding access by transit, not trying to save people a few extra seconds by adding to our roadway capacity. I think that's pretty much it. That was the unpopular thing. We need to work on our priorities. And this goes to, we're talking about decisions being made 10 years ago. These are decisions being made now by this administration to do these projects instead of investing in Baltimore's transit system and investing in Baltimore transit providers. So thank you very much for your time and appreciate it.
Thank you for your kind words. You had the vice chair until Dolefield Road.
I knew it. I know what I'm getting to.
Did you say we had someone online or a comment or something?
We have one written comment in the chat. It says, it's from Jay Lewis, says, "Good morning. What is the approximate timeline for completion of the Penn Camden connection?" That's something
you all.
I can give an update on that. So we have a FRA grant to complete 30% design. That's well underway, and we're also working on the NEPA approval for that project. We do not have final design or construction funding for the project.
Thanks. Okay. Anybody else, team online?
No.
Last call for anybody in the room. Okay, hearing none. Is there anything else from members of the commission? Any new business, old business, anything you want to bring to our attention? Seeing none?
Yes.
Madam
Thank you
Secretary,
for having me.
thank you for being here. We really do appreciate it. And Madam Administrator, we really, I mean, especially under these circumstances, that's been tough. Thank you for being here, being so focused and available. We really appreciate it. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Been moved, second? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
It's not a requirement.
Never seems like we're gonna
Yes.
have enough time, and then we do. It's a funny, I'm not sure what that phenomenon is.
All right.
My neighbor just came back after 3 weeks.